Alright guys, welcome back to F1 News. A potentially huge blow for Max Verstappen today with his chief mechanic confirming his departure from Red Bull after 18 years of service. Curious timing, it must be said, with all the drama at Red Bull over the last few days, but especially given the fact that the season is already well underway. This raises serious questions. Is this really to do with whatever is going on behind the scenes right now at Red Bull? And is this certainly not going to be the last of the major departures from that team over the coming months? Very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always, I greatly appreciate it. Good news for Mercedes, not because they found a solution, but because they know what the problem is. Well, they know one more problem, and it is remarkable watching from afar how significantly downhill Mercedes are going. They have many issues with their car right now, and they are, borderline a midfield team as it presently stands. But what we do have from them is that Allison says they lose competitiveness when the temperatures get higher. So they found another problem. What they don't have is a solution. So that is something, of course, for them to work on. Ferrari, though, they find themselves in a rather promising position, right? They had a phenomenal Australian Grand Prix, a 1-2, of course, on the weekends. Yes, Max Verstappen may still have won, but the reality is we just don't know. Fred Vasseur actually says, maybe you feel that this is a bit optimistic, but take it as you will, that his feeling is if they execute, if Ferrari execute, if they do everything they can to make their car as good as it can be on the weekends, we can put them under pressure. And when Red Bull are under pressure, they will make more mistakes, which is true. I think it would be very interesting to see not just Verstappen, but also the Red Bull team itself. Like, what would happen if Verstappen was in a title fight again? We know what happened at the end of 2021. And Verstappen for the last couple of years has had the advantage that he can bide his time. He can be very patient. If he was in a real title fight, I wonder what that would look like, right? Would the pressure get to him, as it most certainly seemed to back in 2021? Probably not as much now, more mature driver. But also from the Red Bull side, Vasseur's feeling is, if Ferrari execute, if they continue to put the pressure on, then Red Bull will make errors. Whether that's strategy, whether that's setup, whether that's even operationally. Taking the challenge to Red Bull for the championships this season still feels like a rather tall order. But nonetheless, Vasseur, if there's any man on the grid from a team principal side that can do it, he is probably the guy. One of his drivers, though, Carlos Sainz, he is actually being heavily linked to Red Bull right now over the last couple of days. The question is, how much power does Helmut Marko really retain? The feeling is that after this summit, as we discussed yesterday in Dubai after the Jeddah Grand Prix, where the feeling of many was that the Austrian side of the business were going to tell the tyre owners, hey, you really want to stop back in Horner because we've got all these problems we're going to deal with if you do. The tyres then said, we don't care what you think, we're back in Horner anyway. And, well, therefore, Helmut Marko is very much on the back foot, as are Jos Verstappen, potentially Max Verstappen, because he aligns more with that camp, certainly, than he does with the Christian Horner side of things. We'll discuss that more in a second. But Marko says, of course, his form, Sainz, is fascinating, but it has to be said that Checo has delivered 3 good races this year. I'd say 2, but, the fact that he dropped back so much in Melbourne was due to the damaged underbody and the tyre deck, which is one way of looking at it. I don't know, the first couple of stints didn't fill many with much confidence, given the fact that he only seemed to have the damage in the third stint. But, still, fair enough. We'll see how Checo gets on in Japan, because, well, the less said about Japan last year for Checo is probably for the better, to be fair. But as Marko says, his only weakness is in qualifying, where Sainz is not as strong as Leclerc, but still very strong, of course, was front row this past weekend alongside Verstappen. If he can improve there, there's no need to think about replacing him. The atmosphere in the team is very good, also as far as he is concerned. So, I somewhat doubt this part of the statement, but it feels like there's been a little bit of calm at Red Bull over the last couple of weeks. But, well, we see that on the surface, but behind the scenes, I'm not necessarily so sure that's the case, especially what we're going to discuss here in a couple of seconds. So scientists are going to look for an opportunity. Of course, Red Bull would be the ideal prospect, you would imagine, well on paper, given the other options. Alonso, I'm sure, will feel the same way about that Red Bull seat next season, because all of a sudden, Mercedes is far less attractive. Yes, they're a top team, but if you look at the top teams, are Mercedes as attractive as Red Bull? No. Are they as attractive as McLaren if McLaren were to make a change? Possibly not. And are they even attractive as Aston Martin, right? I mean, come on, let's be real right now. There's talk from Aston Martin that they're getting serious, especially when it comes down to this move. So today we heard reporting from Autosport that they have learned that indeed, after the Jeddah Grand Prix, there was an astronomical offer, as it was described today. A big money offer, but the quote was astronomical, from Lawrence Stroll and Aston Martin to Adrian Newey. to get him into their team. Now, this comes at a time when there is a feeling that Aramco, Saudi-owned, may well either look to straight up purchase Aston Martin as a Formula One team or heavily invest. Of course, they are presently the title sponsor. There is a feeling that if Newey is gettable, now is the time, because Red Bull are, well, you can argue they're in chaos. They were a few weeks ago. Maybe that's not so true now, but if there's any time that you could tempt Newey away from Red Bull, now is the time. I think it's now or never for these teams. Ferrari, Aston Martin, those are the two key candidates. Mercedes don't seem to be so interested, and you can debate as to why, but Ferrari are interested. We've heard about this, that they've sent an offer to Newey or whatever. Apparently he's received it. Aston Martin have said, hey, Mr. Adrian Newey, sure, we might not be Ferrari, we might not have Lewis Hamilton, but we do have Fernando Alonso for now. We might discuss that in a second, because Alonso could go to Red Bull, which is possible. It would be quite the Alonso thing to happen for him to go to Red Bull just as Newey leaves and goes to Aston Martin. Like, that would maybe, I don't know, it'd be interesting if that was to occur. But with Ferrari, Newey would have to go to Maranello in Italy, and there's a feeling that, well, maybe he would prefer just to stay in England and go to work for the Silverstone team, or of course now that's where Aston Martin are based and have their new factory and all this type of stuff. So they have made a big offer, it seems, an astronomical sum to leave Red Bull and to join Aston Martin. It was made during the weekend of the Saudi Grand Prix. So we'll see what Newey decides to do on this one, but I imagine he'd be offered not only money, obviously, but also potentially a stake in the team, right? Maybe an ownership stake or something like this. It's quite plausible that Aston Martin, with Aramco backing, potentially give Newey an offer that he has a very hard time refusing. And maybe Ferrari will do the same, because they effectively did that to Lewis Hamilton. They gave a blank check and they said, write what number you want, and then we'll support all of your other endeavours and everything like this, and we'll give you a better car than Mercedes. So it's a win-win-win. And Hamilton signed the line at the bottom of the page. Maybe Newey will do a similar thing, either for Ferrari, because I'm sure that John Elkann and Fred Vasseur are trying to make that happen. But if he doesn't, Aston Martin remains the most likely possibility, and we've discussed, I think it was also mentioned in the article, that of the offers that Newey has, which are numerous, as I'm sure they have been for some time, but especially with the Red Bull chaos, Aston Martin feels like the most, the best offer on paper from what the teams are presently offering. So as I say, it would be quite some timing for Alonso if he was to, leave and go to Red Bull, because the feeling is that Alonso is very much pushing for the Red Bull seat, because why wouldn't you if the option was there? Christian Horner is a big fan of Fernando Alonso and feels like this might be a viable option, certainly if Verstappen on his way out is a possibility, and it feels more likely than ever, especially given the announcement we are going to see in just a couple of seconds. It was actually 9 years ago today where Verstappen became the youngest ever point scorer at the Malaysian Grand Prix. These were the placings there, so Verstappen was P7, Sainz was P8, and then Kvyat and Ricciardo P9, P10, of course. Quite the statement from Max that weekend in the Toro Rosso. But ever since Max has joined Red Bull, he has been working with, in some form or another, Lee Stevenson, chief mechanic for Max Verstappen right now, and has been in a few different roles from the mechanical perspective over the last several years. But this was a big announcement coming out over the last 24 hours that chief mechanic for Verstappen, Lee Stevenson, is departing Red Bull after 18 years with the team. His final day was yesterday. Stevenson has been alongside Verstappen for all of his 56 Grand Prix victories. Lots of traction, understandably, here on social media today as a result. So I'll share the video here that Lee Stevenson put up on his social media, just discussing the decision and really the next steps. He doesn't go into detail, and you might speculate as to why this decision has come around, why he's departing, whether he's been forced out, seems rather doubtful. Seems like it's his own decision. But the reasons why he's come to that decision and the timing of this decision are still kind of an unknown, and therefore there has been rather a fair bit of speculation.
Hi everyone, hope you're doing well, hope you're having a good day. Just thought I'd hop on here just to let you all know that you won't be seeing any more posts from me from Red Bull, because today's my last day. So it's been an amazing 18 years, and all the things that I've managed to achieve here with the team has just been absolutely incredible. Working on the first car over here, which is RB2, and then RB16B, and then obviously the 19. It's just been an incredible journey. I just want to say thanks to everyone here. It's been an amazing time that I've had here. In 2006 when I started, I never thought we'd win races, get poles, win championships, but we've managed to do all of that, and it's just been amazing. So yeah, on to the next chapter. That chapter starts on Monday when I fly to Japan to start work with my new team at the other end of the pit lane. It's going to be a massive challenge, but one that I'm ready for.
So just to discuss the timeline of events here for Stevenson, so this article here from GP Blog says the following: he became the second mechanic at Red Bull from the fourth mechanic, eventually becoming the first mechanic on QUITS car back in 2015, when the Russian was replaced by Max in 2016. He then first met Verstappen. They got along very well, and there was further discussions on that even in early 2020. So he was then their chief mechanic for some time, then they swapped roles. Another gentleman took the role of Verstappen's new first mechanic, and then Stevenson took the role as the support team chief mechanic, the role below that of the chief mechanic. But then it seems in 2023 that then changed around, that he then became Verstappen's chief race mechanic at the start of 2023, having worked closely alongside the Dutch driver over the last several years. Now, the article also says here that his departure was agreed during the 2023 season, but I looked through probably 10 to 15 articles discussing this today, and I couldn't find any other article that actually said that. So I don't really know where that's from. I don't think Lee Stevenson mentioned that himself. It may be true, but I will say the timing would be curious, right? Because it's relatively rare that when these changes happen, they happen at a time like this. He's moving, and also it's funny, the article says moving to a job with another team that will involve him moving to Japan. It's like, he's obviously not moving to Japan to live there. He's going there for the Grand Prix. Well, that's what he meant from the video. So take this with a bit of a grain of salt, maybe. But the feeling is that this is happening now for some reason. And we are 3 races into the year, which I think is also why last year's kind of drama in some ways, when Angela Cullen and Lewis Hamilton parted ways, the timing again was strange, because that I think was after the first Grand Prix before Jeddah, or it was maybe after Jeddah before Australia. I think maybe it was after Bahrain before Jeddah that happened. So it was like, it's not at the end of the season. This is usually when, if you're going to make changes like this, one, mechanic or engineer, whatever, leaves, one team goes to another. It typically is going to happen at the end of the year when these changes happen. Not always, for sure, but you would expect maybe that a mechanic working on the Red Bull car would probably stay there for the season, leave at the end of the year, go to a new challenge, because, I imagine a team at the other end of the grid, as it seems he says, at the other end of the pit lane, so that kind of implies a team significantly further down the grid. Probably not a team that Verstappen would go with Stevenson to join, right? Because Aston Martin, well, I don't think he would describe them as the other end of the pit lane if he was going there, for example. So I imagine, they've given him a nice lucrative contract offer, and, it makes sense, new challenge, all these other factors. And these things occur, right? You've been with the team for 18 years. You've won everything that there is to win with that team as the chief mechanic of the team, been with Max Verstappen. An offer comes along that's, from a monetary perspective, more beneficial, and sure, makes perfect sense. New challenge, new opportunities. These things happen with the top teams, that the top staff get better offers elsewhere, and then, they fancy a new challenge themselves, they take up that offer. But the timing is raising questions, because we're now 3 races in, and this is happening before Japan. The reason why I've brought this up, by the way, is that the race engineer Ben Mitchell for Lance Stroll actually is stepping away after the Australian Grand Prix. So it's not the only time this is happening at all, but he's just stepping into a different role. So he's moving around within the organisation as their head of performance optimization into the team. So Lance Stroll would have a new race engineer on the radio for the next Grand Prix. But a chief mechanic leaving 3 races in is something worthy of discussion given this. So this is the discussed power struggle behind the scenes at Red Bull right now. We know that it's been very chaotic over the last couple of months, and there has been a feeling behind the scenes that heads are going to roll, either some of these heads that you see, or just in general, the power dynamics in the team are so stretched, and it is frustrating many employees, and I think I understand probably why, given what's happened over the last couple of months here, really. We also saw last year Rob Marshall, he departed to go now to McLaren, so there have been big names from Red Bull, from the technical side, from the engineering side, from the mechanical side, that have departed over the last 12, 24 months, which makes sense when a team wins. Often those individuals I mentioned get better offers. But in this case, given it's Verstappen's chief mechanic, given that he's very close to the team, and considering the timing, it feels like there might be slightly more to this than meets the eye, because, it's not like Stevenson mentioned anything about why he'd taken this move. And my feeling is that while, yes, I'm sure there would have been pull factors from where he's going next, It's possible there may have been push factors as well from internally at Red Bull that make this more likely, and there's just been lots of speculation in the media over the last couple of months that there will be staff leaving Red Bull as a result of this, either pushed out or pulled away as a result. So I don't think that for whatever reasons this has occurred, although of course it is a reasonably big deal for Verstappen's chief mechanic to step away. Whatever reasons this has happened for, I wouldn't be at all surprised if over the coming months, and probably weeks, let's be real, we see more similar confirmations of relatively important figures at Red Bull stepping away. Now, does this mean that they ain't going to be able to stand up Verstappen's car anymore, and Stevenson was carrying the ship on his back and all of a sudden Verstappen's setups are going to be terrible? I'm sure not. Obviously, they've got very talented mechanics over there. But nonetheless, it is something of a loss to Red Bull, even in that regard. And even if it doesn't massively affect Max's performance from now to the end of the year, it certainly affects the general feeling around the way that Red Bull team currently is. Given the fact that Horner feels, well, he seems to feel, and the community in general seems to feel that Horner's position is more stable than it has been in quite some time. Maybe he needs to go to a team like Sauber, though, because they have some things to fix. I just wanted to mention this. I thought it was crazy, really. They've had loads of pit stop issues the first couple of races, wheel nut problems, all sorts of stuff. These have been their pit stop times this season. They have a banger 2.77 for Zhou in Bahrain lap 28. But it's not been pretty outside of that. Bottas, of course, had that 52-second stop in Bahrain. They've had a stinker every weekend. At least one, by the way. Like, after Bahrain, they were like, oh my god, we just did a Mercedes stop, as in Monaco, right? For Bottas. Better not let that happen again. Let's lock in. Let's fix those problems. They went to Jeddah and bang, lap 41, 29-second stop for Zhou. And then Australia, they doubled up, baby. They obviously pitted Bottas on lap 8, 31-second stop. And then Zhou had a 20-second stop on lap 35. So, been an absolute nightmare. They need to figure what's going on because they have some things to resolve, and then they resolved some things and more issues emerge with their pit stop. So, complete mess, and I don't know if Lee Stevenson can steady the ship over there, but maybe bringing him in might help them out in some regards. Just a couple of things to mention before we close out here. Actually, we of course saw the 2024 Australian Grand Prix, the first race in a very long time with no Red Bull and no Mercedes on the podium. That's only happened 3 times in the last decade in the entire hybrid era. All of those Grand Prix have included the Verstappen DNF. So, a couple in 2020 and then the 2024 Aussie Grand Prix. And just to build a bit of excitement here for Japan, here's the cherry blossom in the background. Fully in like cherry blossom season, I think, as well, right? Because we're now doing Japan in Suzuka far earlier in the year than usual. So, different climate, I'm guessing, to some extent. Now, I don't really know what the photographer told all the boys to do here, but I'm guessing he said, oh, you know, put the fist up, put the finger up or something. And most drivers have done something rather similar. The only 2 that have something else going on are Zhou, who seems to be plotting something, and then of course Lewis Hamilton. I don't know what my guy's doing here top left, but I thought it was pretty funny. So very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.